On a dark, rainy night, a lonely billionaire woman in a wheelchair sits abandoned in a small roadside café, waiting for a first date who never shows up. But fate has other plans. A 35-year-old single dad named Susan and his little daughter Melissa are driving through the storm when they spot her alone in the rain. What begins as a simple act of kindness turns into a life-changing journey filled with suspense, danger on the road, emotional truths, and a heart-melting connection none of them expected. As the storm grows louder outside, their hearts quietly open inside. A broken billionaire finds comfort. A gentle single dad finds someone who truly sees him. And a little girl becomes the bridge between two wounded souls. This nighttime road story is packed with emotion, tension, romance, and a powerful lesson for society. Kindness can change a life, and sometimes love arrives when you least expect it. If you enjoy emotional love stories, suspenseful rescues, and heartwarming family moments, this video is for you. Selena, a 26-year-old billionaire, sat alone in a small roadside cafe. The rain hammered against the windows, and her wheelchair made her feel even more vulnerable. Despite all her wealth, luxury cars, mansions, and private assistants, she had never felt more alone. Tonight was supposed to be her first date with someone she had been talking to online, but he never showed up. She hugged her arms, staring at the wet streets outside, her expensive silk coat doing little against the chill of loneliness. The rain fell in sheets, drumming relentlessly against the windshield of Susan's SUV. Every droplet bounced off the glass, creating a rhythm that matched the tension of the stormy night. Susan gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes scanning the slick streets for obstacles, fallen branches, or reckless drivers. At 35, he had learned to expect the unexpected, but tonight the storm seemed almost alive, tossing the city in its chaotic dance. Beside him, Melissa, his 8-year-old daughter, pressed her small hands against the window, eyes wide with fascination. "Daddy, look at the rain! It's like a million tiny lights dancing," she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement despite the storm. Her laughter, pure and unrestrained, was a stark contrast to the tension that clung to Susan's chest. Susan glanced at her, offering a small, tired smile. "It is beautiful, Mel, but don't get too close to the window. It's slippery." He kept one hand on the wheel, the other gently resting on Melissa's arm. He had always been protective, especially since her mother had left years ago, leaving him as her sole guardian. Every decision he made, every turn he took, carried the weight of responsibility for this small life. Melissa wriggled in her seat, unconcerned by the gravity of life. She loved adventures, even if that meant being soaked by the rain or navigating through puddle-filled streets. "Daddy, I hope we see something exciting tonight. Maybe a secret rainbow or a glowing car." Her imagination was endless, and it was one of the many things Susan cherished about her. He chuckled softly, though his eyes remained vigilant. "Well, if we see something exciting, I'll make sure we don't get run over, okay?" His voice was calm, reassuring, but his mind wandered. Even after years of routine, he had never been able to shake this feeling that life had a way of throwing unexpected surprises at you. Sometimes it was small, a lost wallet, a flat tire. Other times, it could change your life entirely. The streets were almost empty, as if the city itself had retreated indoors, leaving only the occasional car braving the storm. Streetlights flickered, casting long reflections across the wet asphalt. Susan's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the sheets of rain like blades of silver. The rhythmic swish of the wipers was the only steady sound amid the chaos outside. Melissa pressed her face closer to the glass. "Daddy, do you think we'll see someone needing help tonight? Like a person stuck in the rain?" she asked softly. There was innocence in her voice, but also a subtle awareness of the world's harshness, something Susan had tried to shield her from for years. Susan's heart clenched. "Maybe, Mel. Maybe we will. And if we do, we'll make sure they're safe." He spoke with conviction, though even he didn't know what awaited them in the storm. Little did he realize the person in need was someone who would touch their hearts in ways he had never imagined. He adjusted the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of Melissa's eager eyes. She was his anchor, his reason for pushing forward through every challenge, every long night of work, every hardship. And yet, as he drove cautiously through the rain, he felt a flicker of anticipation he couldn't explain. Sometimes life had a way of preparing you for someone you didn't even know you were meant to meet. The storm intensified. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the SUV with each growl. Rain splashed against the hood with the force of tiny drums, threatening to obscure the road ahead. Susan's jaw tightened. He slowed down, careful to avoid puddles that could send the car skidding. Protecting Melissa was always his top priority, but tonight, it felt like fate itself was testing him. Melissa reached over, lightly touching his arm. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" Her voice, though young, carried a trust that warmed his heart. "Of course, Mel. We'll be fine, I promise." His words were steady, but inside he couldn't help but feel a strange, unshakable sense that something significant was about to happen. They turned a corner, headlights cutting through the rain like piercing beams. Susan's eyes caught a flicker of movement up ahead, a dim light in the otherwise empty street. He slowed instinctively, curiosity and caution warring inside him. Melissa leaned forward, her small hands gripping the dashboard. "Daddy, do you see that?" Susan's gaze followed hers, and in that moment, he saw her, a lone figure, seemingly trapped by the storm, sitting in a wheelchair beside a small café. She looked fragile, vulnerable, almost as if the rain had wrapped her in a world of isolation. Something stirred deep inside him, a pull he couldn't ignore. Melissa gasped softly. "Daddy, she looks scared." Her words were simple, but they struck a chord in Susan's chest. The sight of someone in need, especially someone so exposed in the storm, awakened a protective instinct he hadn't felt in a long time. Susan's hand tightened on the wheel. "Hang on, Mel. Let's see if we can help her." He felt a strange mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Something about this stormy night felt different, as if it had been building to this exact moment, a moment that could change their lives forever. He parked the SUV carefully near the café, the rain lashing against the windows, and grabbed his umbrella. Melissa followed, small feet splashing through puddles, her face lit with excitement and concern. Susan's heart pounded. He didn't know the woman's story, but instinctively, he knew she needed help, and perhaps they were about to find more than just someone to rescue. As they approached, Susan's mind raced. Who was she? Why was she out in this storm alone? And yet, beneath his caution, a subtle warmth began to bloom. A sense that tonight, fate had led them here for a reason, and the connection awaiting them would be unlike anything he had ever known. Melissa tugged at his sleeve, eyes wide. "Daddy, can we really help her?" Susan smiled softly, glancing down at his daughter. "Yes, Mel, we're going to help her. And maybe she'll help us too in ways we don't even realize yet." The storm raged on, but for the first time that night, Susan felt a glimmer of hope. A hope that this rainy night, with all its danger and uncertainty, could lead to something beautiful, heartwarming and unforgettable. Susan turned the corner cautiously, eyes scanning the slick, rain-soaked streets. Streetlights flickered through the pouring rain, their reflections scattering like molten gold across the asphalt. A sudden glimmer caught his attention, a faint, solitary light flickering through the mist. At first he thought it was a reflection from a passing car, but then he realized it was something, or someone, stationary, waiting amidst the storm. Melissa, sitting beside him in the passenger seat, pressed her small hand against his arm. "Daddy? Look! Do you see that light?" Her voice carried both excitement and concern, a mix of curiosity only a child could have. Susan squinted through the rain, heart skipping a beat. There, outside the corner cafe, was a lone figure in a wheelchair, partially sheltered beneath the weak glow of the neon sign. "Daddy, she looks like she needs help," Melissa whispered, her voice trembling slightly with worry. Her eyes were wide, her small face pressed against the glass, and Susan felt a pang of instinctive protectiveness. He didn't know who this woman was or why she was out in the storm alone, but something about the sight tugged at his heart. He pulled the steering wheel, bringing the SUV to a gentle stop. Rain streaked down the windshield, but he didn't move immediately. Instead, he studied the figure for a long, tense moment. She seemed vulnerable, fragile in a way that pierced him deeply. Susan had spent years shielding Melissa from the harshness of the world, and yet here he was, confronted by someone clearly in need, someone who had no one to turn to tonight. Melissa fidgeted beside him, her small fingers gripping his sleeve. "Daddy, can we go help her?" Susan exhaled slowly, nodding. "Yes, Mel. Let's go." His voice was calm, reassuring, but his mind raced. He didn't know the woman's story. Didn't know why fate had placed her in the path of a storm, but he trusted his instincts. Sometimes you just knew when someone needed you. He grabbed his umbrella and opened the car door, stepping into the cold, relentless rain. The droplets hit him in a sharp, stinging rhythm, soaking through his jacket, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the figure before him, Selena. Her long, damp hair clung to her face, and her eyes, wide and uncertain, met his briefly. She seemed startled by his presence but did not recoil. Melissa followed close behind. Umbrella clutched tightly in her small hands. Her eyes sparkled with compassion, the innocence of a child radiating warmth even through the storm. "Hi, are you okay?" she asked shyly. Her voice carried a gentle curiosity, a sincerity that melted the tension around Selena like sunlight breaking through clouds. Selena blinked, slightly taken aback. She had expected no one to come, had resigned herself to a lonely, wet night in a cafe she didn't even particularly like. And yet here were two strangers, one grown, one child, standing in the rain, offering her help without question, without hesitation. A strange feeling stirred in her chest, a mixture of relief, curiosity, and something she couldn't name. Susan knelt slightly to meet her eyes, his umbrella tilted to shield them both. "Hi, my name is Susan. This storm is really bad, and you shouldn't be out here alone. Can we help you get somewhere safe?" His voice was steady, gentle, and infused with a calm confidence that made Selena's heart skip. She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the arms of her wheelchair. She had been out in the world of strangers countless times, accustomed to cautious smiles, empty gestures, and people who saw only her money. But there was something different about him, something sincere, something protective. Melissa, noticing the hesitation, placed her tiny hand lightly on Selena's knee. "You don't have to be scared. Daddy says we can help." Her voice was soft, innocent, and for some reason it made Selena smile through the tension. She hadn't felt such warmth in a long time. Real warmth, not the kind bought by luxury or flattery. Susan's gaze never wavered from hers. "We won't let you get caught in this storm alone," he said. His tone was simple, but it carried a weight of reassurance that few words could convey. The umbrella above them did little against the driving rain, but it was enough to create a small, private space, a bubble of safety amidst the chaos outside. For a moment, the three of them simply stood there, rain dripping around them, the cafe lights flickering like distant stars. Selena's heart pounded, a mix of fear, relief, and curiosity. Who were these strangers who appeared like angels in the storm? How was it possible that in this moment of isolation she felt hope? Melissa tugged again at Susan's sleeve, whispering, "Daddy, she's smiling. She's okay with us." Susan nodded, feeling a surge of protective instinct and an unexpected warmth that he didn't yet understand. He reached out his hand slowly. "Shall we get you somewhere safe?" His eyes searched hers, patiently waiting, silently conveying that she had a choice, and that she was not alone. Selena's fingers trembled as she looked from Susan to Melissa. For the first time in a long while, she felt trust, not cautious, hesitant trust, but the kind that quietly blooms when someone shows genuine care. She nodded slowly, and a flicker of relief softened her features. Susan smiled gently, extending his hand to guide her wheelchair. Melissa hopped lightly beside him, holding the umbrella steady as if guarding a treasure. The rain continued to pour, but the tension began to lift. A small, unspoken connection had formed between the billionaire woman who had everything yet felt empty, the cautious but kind father, and the spirited little girl whose innocence could light the darkest night. And in that unexpected encounter, amidst the storm and the shadowed streets, all three of them felt a subtle shift, a spark of hope, a whisper of something beautiful on the horizon, and the first steps toward a night that would change their lives forever. Selina's gaze shifted between Susan and Melissa, her mind racing. Every instinct she had developed, over years of wealth and privilege, screamed at her to be cautious. People rarely approached her without ulterior motives: admiration for her money, curiosity about her disability, or a hidden agenda. Trust had always been a luxury she couldn't afford. Yet, as she studied them, something felt different. Susan's stance was steady, protective, almost instinctively gentle. His eyes carried sincerity, a calm assurance that made her heart ache with a mixture of longing and disbelief. And Melissa's small face, bright and innocent, shone with pure warmth. She didn't seem to care about the expensive wheelchair, the silk coat, or the social status Selina carried like armor. She simply radiated genuine concern, and it melted a layer of Selina's defenses she hadn't realized was still there. I'm fine, thank you," Selina whispered, her voice soft, almost hesitant. She wasn't used to speaking so openly to strangers, especially strangers who didn't expect anything from her. But the rain pouring down the street, the isolation of the night, and the sincerity in their presence made her feel, just for a moment, that it was okay to accept help. Susan knelt beside her wheelchair, carefully tilting the umbrella to shield both of them from the relentless rain. "It's pouring outside. Let us help you get home safely," he said. His tone was calm, steady, and filled with a kind of warmth that Selina hadn't felt in years. There was no hint of condescension, no hidden agenda, just a human offer of assistance, simple and honest. Melissa bounced slightly on her heels, holding the umbrella firmly above them. "Yeah, we won't let you get wet," she added with a shy grin. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and for a brief moment, Selina felt a spark of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. She nodded slowly, the faintest hint of a smile appearing on her lips. That small gesture carried so much weight: years of caution, layers of armor, and the loneliness of her privilege, all softened in the presence of this unexpected father-daughter pair. She realized she hadn't felt a glimmer of hope like this in years, not since before her accident, not since the walls around her heart had grown so high. The storm raged on, relentless and unforgiving, but standing there in the dim glow of the cafe lights, a small bubble of safety seemed to form around them. The umbrella did little to shield them from the torrent outside, but the protection in Susan's posture and the innocence in Melissa's eyes created something stronger, an emotional shield that began to push back the chill of isolation. Selina's mind raced, her thoughts a mixture of hesitation and longing. She had spent so many nights alone, surrounded by luxury yet feeling completely invisible. How could two strangers, caught in a rainstorm, change something that had felt permanent? Could it really be as simple as accepting help? Or was this another test of trust she wasn't sure she could pass? Her fingers trembled slightly on the wheelchair arms, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Susan noticed and offered a gentle smile, reassuring without words. His presence was calming, grounding her in a way that her assistants, her friends, and even her wealth had never been able to do. He didn't see her as a project or a burden. He saw her as a person. Melissa leaned closer, her small voice breaking through the tension. "It's okay. I promise. We just want to help." Her words were innocent, yet they carried a purity that struck something deep inside Selina. She felt tears prick at her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. Relief that, in this cold, rainy night, Someone genuinely cared. Susan's hand rested lightly near her wheelchair, careful not to overstep, but present enough that she could feel his support. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," he said softly. "We'll go as slowly as you need." His words weren't just about caution. They were about respect, something Selena rarely received from people outside her social circles. The storm outside mirrored the tension in her chest. Every raindrop pounding against the pavement felt amplified, echoing the mix of fear and anticipation she felt inside. She was torn between self-protection and the strange, unexplainable pull she felt toward these strangers. A flash of lightning illuminated the street, momentarily blinding her, and then the thunder rolled, deep and resonant, shaking the cafe walls. Selena exhaled slowly, allowing herself to lean slightly toward Susan's side, acknowledging that she was choosing to trust him. Melissa noticed, her eyes lighting up. "See, Daddy? She's okay," she whispered, her small hand brushing against Selena's. The simple gesture was enough to melt away some of the last layers of Selena's hesitation. She realized she wasn't alone. Not really. Not tonight. Susan gently guided the wheelchair, keeping his movements careful and deliberate. Each step toward safety felt weighted with suspense and the unknown, yet there was also a quiet sense of magic in the air, a feeling that this encounter was more than coincidence, that fate had orchestrated it. Selena's heart beat faster, a mixture of nervousness, relief, and a hint of excitement. It was strange, almost disorienting to feel this vulnerable and safe at the same time. She had never known such a combination of emotion. Her entire life had been defined by control and caution, and yet here she allowed herself to surrender to the moment. The storm continued its relentless rhythm, but inside her, the tension softened. The world outside may have been chaotic, but within the small circle formed by Susan, Melissa, and her wheelchair, there was warmth, protection, and a glimmer of trust. Selena realized something profound in that instant. Sometimes the most meaningful connections arrive not when expected, but when we are most cautious, most hesitant, and most in need. And tonight, her hesitation was the very thing that led her to hope. For the first time in a long while, she felt the possibility of safety, friendship, and even something deeper, a spark of connection that might one day bloom into love. She nodded again, a silent agreement, a quiet acceptance that she would allow herself to be helped tonight. Melissa's small grin encouraged her further. "Come on, we'll take care of you," she said cheerfully. And with that, Selena felt a sense of anticipation ripple through her, a feeling that, though the storm raged on outside, something beautiful was about to unfold. In that moment, amidst the rain, the shadows, and the suspense, Selena allowed herself to believe in the kindness of strangers. Not strangers anymore, she thought. They were something else entirely, something that might just change her life forever. The rain hit them like a relentless wall as they stepped out of the cafe, each droplet stinging their faces and soaking the edges of their coats. The wind whipped around them, carrying the cold chill of the night, and puddles formed in deep, glistening patches along the sidewalk. Melissa clutched the umbrella tightly, her small fingers trembling with excitement and fear. Susan placed a protective hand on Selena's wheelchair, guiding her carefully across the slippery pavement. "Take your time, Selena," he said calmly, his voice steady amidst the roar of the storm. "We'll get through this safely." His presence radiated an unshakable confidence, and despite the cold, Selena felt warmth creeping into her chest, a sensation she hadn't known in years. The streets were eerily empty, the storm driving almost everyone indoors. Only the occasional car splashed past them, its headlights cutting through the dark, rainy night. Each sound, each shadow seemed magnified in the chaos, adding to the tension that hung thick in the air. Selena gripped the arms of her wheelchair tightly, her knuckles whitening as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Melissa, small but determined, kept the umbrella positioned perfectly over Selena and Susan, shielding them from the worst of the rain. "We're almost there," she said, her voice soft but confident. Her eyes darted nervously at the dark streets, yet her presence brought comfort to Selina, who had never felt such genuine concern from anyone outside her family circle. As they rounded a corner, a fallen tree branch blocked their usual path. Susan's eyes widened slightly at the sight, calculating the safest way forward. "Looks like we'll need to take a detour," he muttered, scanning the unfamiliar streets. The risk of slipping or encountering another hazard in the stormy night made his jaw tighten. Selina's heart raced, the unfamiliarity of the route amplifying her anxiety. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked softly, her voice trembling just enough for Susan to notice. He glanced at her, kneeling slightly to meet her eyes. "Yes, Selina, I've got you. Just trust me." His hand rested lightly on her wheelchair, steadying her as much emotionally as physically. The detour took them through narrow, winding streets, slick with rain and scattered with debris. Each step Susan took with the wheelchair was deliberate and careful, the wheels skimming over puddles while avoiding unseen hazards beneath the water. The storm made every movement more dangerous, but Susan's calm presence reassured Selina. For the first time in her life, she felt someone's care was genuine and unshakable. Melissa hummed a soft tune as they moved, her voice small but determined against the roar of the rain. "It's okay. Don't worry, Selina. Daddy knows the way." Her innocence and faith made Selina's chest ache with a strange, tender emotion. She had never realized how deeply the presence of a child, pure and unjudging, could soothe a heart weighed down by years of isolation. A gust of wind nearly toppled the umbrella, and Susan instinctively braced it with one hand while keeping the other on the wheelchair. "Hold on tight," he instructed, his tone calm but authoritative. Selina felt herself leaning slightly into his reassurance, the tension in her body slowly easing as she realized she was not alone. Not truly alone. They passed broken branches and puddles deep enough to hide potholes. Every creak and crack of the wet asphalt made Selina's pulse quicken. Yet she felt a strange safety in Susan's presence. It was a protection she had never experienced, not from her assistants, her guards, or her high-powered friends. For the first time, someone cared about her safety simply because they wanted to. Melissa skipped lightly beside them, stepping over puddles with surprising agility for her small frame. "Almost there," she said cheerfully, her voice a small beacon of light in the dark, stormy night. Selina smiled weakly at her, feeling a sense of warmth she hadn't thought possible in months. The wind howled through the streets, carrying with it the sound of rain pounding rooftops and splashing off the asphalt. Susan adjusted the wheelchair slightly to protect Selina from the worst of the downpour, his movements deliberate and careful. "Just a little further," he murmured, his voice calm and steady, a lifeline amidst the chaos. Selina's thoughts drifted, marveling at the simple kindness of this man and his daughter. She had spent her life surrounded by people who wanted something from her, who saw her wealth before her humanity. But here, soaked to the bone in the rain, her vulnerability had not been a burden. It had been met with genuine care. She realized her chest felt lighter, her fear replaced with a flicker of hope. Maybe trust didn't have to be risky. Maybe someone could care for her for who she truly was, not for her wealth, her name, or her status. And maybe, just maybe, tonight could be the beginning of something more than mere survival in a storm. A particularly strong gust of wind blew across the street, rattling nearby signs and sending debris skittering. Susan adjusted the wheelchair, shielding Selina and glancing at Melissa to make sure she was safe. "Stay close, Mel," he said softly. "We're almost through this." Selina held on tightly, feeling the wheels skid slightly on a slick patch of asphalt. Fear and adrenaline surged through her, yet the sense of protection never wavered. Susan's steady hands, Melissa's unwavering support, and the shared determination to move forward made her realize she wasn't alone in this storm, or in her life. As they finally approached the SUV, a subtle feeling of relief washed over Selena. The danger of the storm hadn't disappeared, but for the first time in a long time, she felt safe. Safe in the presence of people who cared. Safe in the knowledge that she could allow herself to trust. Melissa's eyes sparkled with triumph. "See? We did it!" she exclaimed, her small face lit with joy. Selena laughed softly, a sound she hadn't allowed herself to make in a long time. Susan opened the car door, keeping a protective hand on the wheelchair. "All safe now," he said gently. "You're going to be okay." Selena nodded, tears of gratitude pricking at the corners of her eyes. For the first time, she understood that true protection and care were not bought with money. They were felt, experienced, and given freely by those with a willing heart. And as they settled into the SUV, dripping wet but unhurt, Selena realized something extraordinary. The storm outside had been fierce, but the storm she had carried inside for so long, the loneliness, the fear, the isolation, was beginning to ease. In that moment, surrounded by rain, wind, and the steady presence of Susan and Melissa, Selena allowed herself to feel something she had almost forgotten: hope, safety, and the quiet, blossoming warmth of human connection. Once inside the SUV, Selena finally began to open up. She shared her story. How a terrible accident had left her paralyzed, how her wealth hadn't solved her loneliness, and how most people only saw her money, not her. Susan listened without judgment, talking about his life as a single dad and the joy Melissa brought him every day. Melissa, sensing the connection, held Selena's hand, and Selena smiled for the first time in weeks. The storm outside suddenly felt less threatening. By the time they reached Selena's mansion, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. Susan helped her inside, and they paused near the grand windows overlooking the wet streets. The warmth between them was undeniable. Selena felt a connection she had never experienced with any of her wealthy peers. Melissa giggled, tugging at Selena's hand. "Come play with me anytime," she said. That simple, innocent gesture sealed a bond between them all. Over the next few weeks, Selena, Susan, and Melissa became inseparable. Selena learned that wealth couldn't buy true care or connection, but love and family could. Susan discovered that trust and love could bloom unexpectedly, even with someone so different from his world. Melissa learned that helping others creates bonds that money can't touch. One rainy evening, as the three of them watched the city lights reflecting on wet streets, Selena whispered softly, "I never imagined I'd find family, and maybe love, on a stormy night." Susan smiled and gently held her hand. Wealth had brought comfort, but love had brought life. Together they had turned a lonely, rainy night into the beginning of something truly magical.